Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another study of this week's Torah portion. Today we study the portion of Mishpatim. We study from the book selections of Lekutei Sichot, the first talk. Just an introduction. Last week, the portion of Yitro, we read about the giving of the Ten Commandments. Immediately after, we read about God calling Moshe to go ascend to Mount Sinai, and he tells them to make a covenant with the Jewish people by bringing a sacrifice and splitting the blood. There is a whole procedure, a technical procedure that takes place at the end of the last week's portion. This week we begin Ve'ele HaMishpatim. These are the laws that you will place before them. The difficulty of the question that we're going to deal is with the word Lifneihem. Ve'ele HaMishpatim. What do you mean Asher Tasim Lifneihem? That you place before them. It doesn't say by Shabbat, this is the law that you place before them. These are the laws of Shabbat. It doesn't say when it comes to kashrut, Zot HaChaya Asher Tochelu, these are the animals that you can eat, Asher Tasim Lifneihem, that you have to place before them. What is Asher Tasim Lifneihem? Is the discussion the Rebbe is going to point out. So we begin. Many parts of the text I will summarize so we can make headways. Commenting on the verse, and these are the laws which you shall place before them, our sages and rabbis offer several interpretations of the Hebrew Lifneihem, translated as before them. Lifneihem, panim, is face. Pnimiyut, internal, is also from the same root. So it can be panim befnim, means inside. Pnimiyut is internal. In a tire of a bike, a bicycle, you have the tire and then you have the pnimit, the inside. In other words, inside is from the same root. What do you mean that you place before them? So rabbis give several. The rabbi is going to share with us two simple ones and another one a Kabbalistic one. Legal issues must be adjudicated before them, that is, before Jewish judges, and not before non-Jews. When there is a dispute between Jews, they must settle it before Jewish judges who rule according to Torah law, and not before non-Jewish magistrates. Even when the secular law is no different than that of the Torah, litigation must be brought before a rabbinic court. Lifneihem, in front of them, in front of the Jewish court. It is forbidden to take legal action in secular court, in Israel secular court, or outside non-Jewish court, even when they follow the Jewish law. In many disputes, many categories, American law based on English law is based on Talmudic law. Still, it is not following Jewish law, for sure. But in addition, the Torah tells us, Ve'ele HaMishpatim, these are the laws that you place before them. If you have a dispute, you want to find out, you have a dispute with a fellow, a neighbor, a friend, a family member, you must take them into Jewish court. I should give you a caveat that that's only when both litigants agree and accept a court. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It's very unfortunate. And I'm going to share, I don't think I'm revealing something new. In the 80s, when I was a yeshiva boy, Satmar and Chabad did not get along. Unlike today they are getting along. Thank God Satmar have made a major U-turn and come back to Chabad. Today we had a Satmar Hasidirat prayer, and they support Chabad in many ways. At the time, they were very, very big. There was a large animosity. I'm not here to put them down. I just want to make an anecdote. So there was a situation, my mashpia, my spiritual leader, Rabbi Yaakov, who passed away about a year and a half ago, used to go in hiding every Friday to a hideout in Williamsburg to teach Tanya and the Rebbe's talk. There was some yeshiva boys, some young couples who wanted to study Chabad, and there it is forbidden. They will kill you, literally kill you. They knew only hands. And they caught him. Somebody reported that he saw a pinya coming into a hideout, a basement, I think, and then a number of students. So they broke in while they were teaching, and they went and cut his beard. and there are many photos of it. And the Chabad, and they beat them up, of course. When they did that, the Chabad, I was at the meeting, we wanted to go and fight back, but the rabbi in Crown Heights, Rabbi Dworkin, issued a decree that we're not allowed to imitate them and respond. However, this was Friday. Saturday night, there was a meeting of the Chabad Hasidim in 770, attended by thousands. And the rabbi says that he's giving them a couple of days for their rabbis to so to say, apologize and point out the persons who did it and punish them. Satmar leadership refused, and that's when Chabad issued a prohibition against the kosher supervision of Satmar. I don't know if you know, that's when the Chabad dairy products used to be Shefa, used to be Lagvina. There was different companies. They lost a lot of money because there was a shipment of Kedem wine, which had the Satmar Echsher, was on a ship. And it was bound to Australia. Australia, my mechutin, my son-in-law's father his father was the chief rabbi of Australia. They heard about the story, so they told Kedem, you don't have to bother with the wine. You can return it back. The ship had to dump it because to return it back would cost them a lot more. They dump it, so that created a major. But for their pride,
Boston Tea Party.
they did not. They did not give back on this. I'm sorry, I'm going to so bad to that. But then what I want to share, there is so many other details that are fascinating. What I want to share is when the man was identified, Chabad had decided to take him to court for cutting beard and beating up. And they would not submit to any court because obviously what they do is Torah way. They are preventing from their Hasidim from living and moving to Lubavitch. So Chabad went to secular court, which they lost, by the way.
Chabad lost?
Yes.
Okay.
They went to court, and we attended court every day. And at the time, the Satmar Hasidim, when we passing by the hallway, they were always, when they would see us, instead of saying hi, they would say, Beila Mishpatim Asher Tosim Lifneim. That's what so they would read that verse to remind us, take it to Jewish court and not to secular court. The problem is they would not be willing to submit themselves to anything.
Yeah.
I just want to share
Let me ask you.
that, just a minute, I just want to share, Chabad had lost in the case because they have money. Chabad had a public defender. The defender wasn't defending Chabad, it was suing them. They hired an extremely, extremely successful lawyer who did a very good job. But years later, this man was caught with misbehaving, too chassid, too zealot. He was caught with, unfortunately, doing things that even a goy shouldn't do. And his rabbis told them that this is a punishment. It's the shame that came upon him is because of what he did. So he went to ask forgiveness from Rabbi Koch, from this. And the rabbi says to him, it's not me, it's the Rebbe. You offended the Rebbe because I was teaching the Rebbe's teaching. So this was after the rabbi passed away. The Rebbe passed away. So he took a minyan. He went to the Rebbe's grave and he asked for forgiveness. So, there is always a happy ending to the story. I want to go, yes.
Then probably a little say, but why was the book issued in civil court then?
Because they had no choice. They needed to make the man pay for that crime.
And they couldn't do it.
And he would not agree to any court. I'm using it as an example so you understand why you find today Jewish people, leaders, etc., are in civil courts or in secular courts. It's because it's called ein min nimna. It's impossible otherwise to make people pay or justice to be issued, unfortunately. And therefore, so I took somebody to court in Los Angeles when I was young, and I lost. But before we started, the rabbi, it wasn't really a court, it was one rabbi, but we accepted him as a judge. The rabbi made us sign that we accept the ruling and we will not pursue any other means. In other words, you don't say, oh, he's biased to one side, or oh, he didn't know the law, and I'm going to a court of three. It says, if you want my opinion, make sure it's obligatory, sign the document. and I signed, the other party, the other rabbi signed, it was between two rabbis, and the rabbi ruled a certain way, which was against me, and I accepted. I did not, I never fought.
You said Rabbi Korf in Williamsburg?
That's his brother.
Oh, his brother.
At Miami.
Yeah.
This is only civil litigation, right?
Correct.
Not criminal.
If the Jewish community has the power to punish in criminal cases, that would apply as well. But they don't.
They
right?
You see it has in the Jewish paper, where people can get, and the guy is on.
Correct. I wanted to move on. I just brought up yes, just a minute.
Move on.
Meaning that live in countries where it's prohibited for a Jewish court to sit, what do?
I just shared with you that if there is no ability, you go to civil court. You go to, yes, Shoshana. Of course. All right. Today, I believe they are very embarrassed. And Rabbi Korf, years later, when, they change around, would go back there and teach and do it public. So there was a real turnaround. I'm not here to bash Satmar, because today they are not, they are in a totally different place where they were at the time. I'm here to use as an example because I lived through it. We would go there to show support for Rabbi Korf. We would go to court every morning in downtown Brooklyn, and they would pass by us and say, "Ve'ele ha'mishpatim asher tusim lifneim."
So their meat, right?
Huh?
You still won't eat.
I don't need to, right? We still stay away from Sadmar. Real Chabad Hasidim will not. I was there. I do not drink their milk. I do not eat their meat, and I don't drink. That's why Kedem has many brands. Herzog is Kedem. Anybody knows that?
Yeah.
Herzog is the original Kedem, and that family, Herzog, decided to make a luxury line of tastier wine. I, for years, would not allow in my house Kedem, because Kedem was Satmar. They had a stamp of Satmar. Today, the Herzog brothers are half Lubavitch, and it's there is but just because there is a Satmar, Itavlev, or whatever the name is, so you would see Kedem sometimes, and I'm very uncomfortable with it. So I don't say I would not drink it, but definitely I would stay away from it. So
Would you dive in if the menu, if that was the only menu?
I don't think so.
Really?
That's my
You
sin.
had Kaddish?
I
You had to
would.
say Kaddish?
Oh, okay. Now you can. And if I have no pants, will I borrow their pants? All right. So this is the first point. Ve'ele ha'mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem. The Torah means to tell us the mishpatim. You have a dispute and you need to know the Jewish law. Do it before them, before Jewish court, and don't go to a non-Jewish court, even if they follow Jewish law. B, lifneihem shares its root with the Hebrew word panim, as I said to you, face, literally meaning face. However, it also has several other meanings, including inner dimensions. Remember I told you that? In this context, the verse instructs us that a student being taught the Torah laws should be exposed to their inner dimensions, their underlying reasons. He should not be taught the laws as a dry canon, but should be shown the motivating principles. Instead of telling a student, this is the law, discover the motivating principle yourself. The teacher should explain the concept in a manner which sits well within the student's understanding. Did you understand that?
Yeah.
So let me explain. Asher tasim lifneihem, meaning you have to show him a happy face, a lit face, meaning explain it so well that they get the reason behind. If they get the reason behind, they will remember it. They will be able to follow it. What if you tell them that's the law, and there are reasons, but you have to search for it? Of course, so half the times he wouldn't find the reason, and then he would question. The other half the time he would find the wrong reason. And the third time that he does find the reason, he will forget. It wouldn't be that important. But what if you give him the reason behind, then you are able to empower the person to do it and remember doing it. That's why the Torah says, Asher tasim lifneihem. Lifneihem means put it in front of them with your face shining, or bring the inside, the reason behind, in front of them. Here is the third explanation. The Alter Rebbe teaches, Asher tasim lifneihem. I'm sorry, I started in Yiddish. According to the Alter Rebbe, lifneihem, inner dimensions refer to the student, the pnimiyut, the Torah, refer to the students, the pnimiyut. The Torah's judgment enable the knowledge of God to be implanted in the inner dimension of a Jew's soul. Within our spiritual makeup, we have a number of different levels, some revealed and some hidden. The Torah must permeate even the innermost and deeply hidden dimension of our soul. The Alter Rebbe says, Asher tasim lifneihem, means push it internally into them, meaning make sure the soul can connect. So it says if someone is stealing, should pay double. Now, you can say the reason is to discourage people from committing the crime. But there must be another reason, a soul reason. There must be a purpose for it. And therefore you go and discover the reason spiritually, or as we call it today, Kabbalistic reason, and share it with them. That's what Asher tasim lifneihem. So even though the law of talking about slavery, the law of watchmen, the law of judgment, not to lie, not to take bribery, there has to be an internal aspect to each law, and that must be taught as well as the actual law. So we have three reasons that the Rebbe is bringing. Number one, before them and not before non-Jewish court. Number two, make sure you shine and light up your face to give them the reasons and explain them very well, the law. And number three, make sure that you teach them all of the law, including the spiritual aspect. Is that clear so far? I'm going to skip a couple of pages and share with you the Rebbe's problem. The Rebbe says that the Torah commandments, how many commandments do we have? 613. They are divided into three categories: Chukim, Eidot, and Mishpatim. Chukim are commandments that make no sense, have no reason. Anybody has an example of Chukim? Kashrut makes no sense. The red heifer, shatnez, thank you very much. These are examples of laws that make no sense. Eidot, testimonies, are, anybody? Eidot would be Shabbat, to remember that God created the world in 6 days, 7 days. Passover, to thank God for freedom. Shavuot, to appreciate the Torah. Sukkot, to appreciate all that's the outdoors. To appreciate the nature. Each holiday comes as a testimony for something. It's not just holidays. There are many other laws that are termed Eidot. Maybe the Rebbe is going to do this. No, it's a legitimate question.
I've never heard this term. I know about Chukim and Mishpatim. I never heard of Eidot.
Okay. Another one, Eidot, would be, Eidut is from the word ed. Ed is a testimony or witness. Holidays, no, it's rabbinic. Eidot would be holidays, I know for sure. There are things we do, or, Gida Nashe, there is the sciatic nerve, chelev. We're not allowed to eat from a kosher animal, to remember that Yaakov was, so that's Eidut.
All right, so these are like laws that there's a connection.
These are, you call it connection, I call it reason. In other words, these are commandments that God gave them to us and explains why. So we remember. We eat matzah.
Yeah.
Matzah. is as a testimony that when we left Egypt, we ate
So it
matzah.
makes some sense. It makes some sense.
It
rather than
makes
make
sense
lots,
when God gave them to us
but,
and explained why.
And
Then you have a third category. Yes.
There's a word, and I can't, it's like out of my head right now. but
In
it's-
Hebrew,
No, no, yeah, in English. It's,
in English,
it talks about,
testimonials,
no,
testimony.
it talks about the difference between laws that make sense and laws that don't make sense.
oh, super rational and rational.
Yeah, super rational.
Rational and super-rational. Okay, we have three categories. Let's stick to the three. Mishpatim, we'll start from the last one. Chukim make no sense just because God said so. That's the law.
Yeah.
Eidot makes sense after God explained them to us. And we do them for a reason. Then you have Mishpatim. Mishpatim are common sense law. For example, most of the 10 Commandments. Don't rob, don't steal. The Gemara says, if we did not receive the Torah from God, we would learn tzniut, modesty, mechatul from a cat, and gezel from nemala, and robbery from an ant. Have you seen, I grew up in Israel where a lot of ants, not fire ants, stay away from fire ants. But regular ants, carpenter ants, when they form a line to collect grain,
Yeah.
they do not rob each other. They don't steal. They go in line. Everybody has their own. If they need help, they get the help. There is no robbery. There is no stealing. Does robbery that to be prohibited make sense or not? Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Because first, if you rob from me, I'll rob from you. In addition, I invested energy, time, money. It's not right that someone who did not put the effort should own it. That's robbery. Modesty, I grew up in Israel, that you always see cats everywhere. You see when a cat, before they go and do it's whatever they need to do, they dig a hole. And after they do what they are doing, what do they do? They cover themselves. I know about pets, cats,
Not dogs.
this.
There's usually, often there's a.
No, he gives a kick. Yeah, he gives a little.
I am here to tell you that cats are very unique with that. The Gemara says, and I testify, because I grew up with cats galore, and they always dig, they find a place to dig. When you see them digging, you're gonna see them sitting down for a while, and as soon as they get up, they cover it. In other words, there are things, modesty, to keep your relationship with your spouse at home and not do it publicly is something that makes sense. You don't have to have God giving it to us. The fact that we have to honor our parents is not super rational. It makes sense. This is the third category. Do you understand the three categories? The Rebbe,
We're just not drinking black currant. Which one is that? Alien?
It's part of kashrut, so it's chukim. The whole law of kashrut makes no sense. Okay, like mixing milk and meat together makes no sense. I'm going to go back. By the way, Mashiach will come.
Cheeseburgers.
Right, and pigs will be
Pigs
kosher.
will be kosher. So it makes no sense. The whole thing makes no sense. Now, we have the three categories. I saved some time, please. Let's not lose it. As the Rebbe, the idea of tasim lifneihem, placing before them, and not going to secular court, may be applied to Mishpatim, because Mishpatim is common law, common sense. So you would think that secular court might judge similarly, therefore the Torah says, don't go there. But Eidot and Chukim, you don't need to say that because they don't have it. A goy, a non-Jewish goy, don't know laws of Shabbat. He don't know the laws of Kashrut. He don't know the law of shatnez and red heifer because it's way out of their realm. And therefore, makes sense that the Torah says, Asher tasim lifneim and Mishpatim, because Mishpatim, they have two. Robbery, honor your father and mother, don't lie, don't take bribery, applies to us and to non-Jews alike. And therefore the Torah says, Asher tasim lifneim, go to Jewish court and not. That makes sense. But what's the second one? To explain it to them as the right. Remember, I told you the second one, make sure you give them the reasons, right? Pnimiyut. As the Rebbe, Mishpatim, you don't need the reason, it's common sense. Don't accept bribery is Mishpat. Don't steal is Mishpat. Honor your father and mother is mishpat. I am your God is mishpat. God created is a boss. Makes sense. We don't need to explain further than just share with them what the law is because they probably already know it. Lifneihem should apply to chukim, to edot. That's where you need. He's asking you about red heifer or shatnez. You come and say, you know what? I do have a reason for it. You come and say to him, you know why Passover you can't have leavened bread? I have a reason for it. You come to him and you say, you know why Shavuot is only one day? Because God came on one day and he did it and he done with one day. You have reasons that you can share. Mishpatim, you don't need to teach the reasons. That's the first question. Does it make sense? You understand, you follow? The third reason, by the way, this is only a selection of the reasons of explanation of Lifneim. The third reason is give them the insight, the Kabbalistic terminology of it, right? That's the Alter Rebbe, the third one. Says the Rebbe, it's more fitting for Chukim and Eidot because they are much closer to the Neshama. It's not common sense. Mishpatim is common sense. You don't need, nothing is missing for the person to fulfill the mitzvah because he already understands why. Chukim and Eidot, on the other hand, makes no sense. So if you give them the Kabbalistic understanding, which they do offer a good explanation, then it will work. Yet the Torah used Lifneihem only when it comes to Mishpatim, not by Chukim and not by Eidot. Did you understand? It seems a technicality, but that will help us understand Mishpatim much deeper. Did you understand the questions? I hope so. So again, to summarize, the word Lifneihem means three interpretations. One, before Jewish court and not secular. Two, give them the inner reasons and explain it in details. And number three, bring them the Kabbalistic, all layers of the law. As the Rebbe, you have three categories of commandments. You have makes no sense. You have commandments that God gave us and explained them. And you have commandments that even if God wouldn't give us, we would know. We learn, it's nature. How do we know it? Cain murdered his brother and God is punishing him. God never warned him not to murder. Why is he punished? The Gemara says, these are common sense and Cain should have known that it's not acceptable. Sodom and Gomorrah, same story. We don't find God warning them. You can ask, what is their sin? They're cruel to poor people. They're very, very cruel to an extreme. It doesn't say in the Torah that God warned them or gave them the commandment to not be cruel. The reason they are punished so severely is because it's common sense. You don't need a father, mother, or God to teach you not to be cruel to animals, not to be cruel to people. It's common sense. I don't need for a commandment. God gave us a commandment. It's a different discussion. Why? Says the Rebbe, if so, when you need to give them all these three reasons, only Mishpatim, the first explanation makes sense. Take them to Jewish code, not secular code, because secular code might be duplicating the same path as a Jewish code, and the Torah says don't go there. But if it's the reason about explaining, I'm giving the reason, Mishpatim is the last one. You need to give them the better reasons or answer all questions because they know it. And the same is the third one, the Kabbalistic interpretation, you don't need it because they already know it and they'll follow. It's more needed into Eidot and Chukim. I hope you understand that. Now let's get to the answer. The Rebbe is trying to offer different answers and then he shlogs them. Then he proves that they don't hold. The Rebbe is going to give us the following answer. Here is the reason. I'm going to give you the gist of it so that when you are discovering it, it will not be the first time you hear it. The Rebbe says that the one that we need to follow because God said so is Mishpatim, more than those that don't make no sense. Because the other laws you might end up doing because it's common sense. If you're doing it because it's common sense, you will not follow because God said so. and therefore you are not fulfilling the mitzvah. And there is a very dangerous outcome where we will not follow all the time. In other words, when you say do not steal, makes sense, don't steal. What if nobody hears? What if the guy is a thief anyway? Then maybe it makes sense. What if he will be happy if he knew that I took some of his money? Maybe it makes sense. That's why God says to you that you have to place it before them. This is my law, and not going to the secular court to understand that you follow Mishpatim, simple common sense commandments, because God said so. And God says, do not steal. It means do not steal, period. And there is no exception. When God says, don't take bribery, it means all the time, without exception. That's the point of the Rebbe, but the Rebbe is going to take it in a different route. Let's see. Page 325 on top. True, our sages state, deed is most essential, emphasizing that the actual observance of a mitzvah is of fundamental importance. For example, with regards to the mitzvah of tefillin, and the entire Torah is equated to tefillin, were a person to have in mind all the spiritual intentions associated with the mitzvah, but fail to actually bind tefillin to his head and arm, he has not performed the mitzvah and is considered in the category of a skull on which tefillin has not been placed. Makes sense? You understand? God says put on tefillin. Action is what needed. If you speak about it, you study about it, you concentrate about it, you did not wrap yourself lighting Chabad candles, making kiddush, eating on Shabbat. If you talk about it and think about it, you didn't do the mitzvah, because action is what God demands. If, by contrast, a person were to put on tefillin, even without considering the intent of the mitzvah, he fulfills the mitzvah. This applies even when a person is advanced enough to be capable of focusing his intent, yet fails to do so. Although he fulfills the mitzvah in a perfunctory manner, he still must recite a blessing beforehand and mention God's name in his and his sovereignty. The lack of a higher intention does not detract from the fact that the mitzvah is being observed. The same applies with regards to other mitzvot, because the deed is most essential. So the rule is deed is most essential. If you put on tefillin, you have no idea what you're doing, you have to say God's name. You have to say a blessing. If you think about it, concentrate about it, you cannot say God's name. You cannot make a blessing. You didn't fulfill the mitzvah. Nevertheless, this
Say that again, what? If you think about it, you don't fulfill the mitzvah?
right, without putting on tefillin.
Without
what?
putting on the.
The deed is the most essential. It is the determining factor whether you fulfill the mitzvah or whether you can say a blessing. If you're thinking about tefillin and you know the hidden dimension of tefillin and all the spiritual effect that it has, but you did not actually put the tefillin on your arm and head, you did not fulfill the mitzvah. You can say the blessing. Simple as that.
But if you put the tefillin on, but you don't say the blessing?
You fulfill the mitzvah, but it's lacking the blessing. The blessing, by the way, is a rabbinic enactment. You didn't know that, right?
Well, I noticed the blessings.
Birkat mitzvot, huh?
The Chabad blessings are different than. the
Okay,
Ashkenaz.
now we're going to talk about blessings. The Birkat mitzvot, blessings before every commandment, is rabbinic, with one exception, which is Birkat Hamazon, grace after meal, ve'achalta ve'savata uberachta. Eat, satiate yourself, and then thank God. So the blessing after meal, the 4 or 5 blessings that we have is rabbinic enactment. Yehoshua did the first one. Later on, Moshe did Mazon. Nodeh lecha is Yehoshua, he entered the Holy Land, it's about the Holy Land. The rabbis did Ve'al Hakol, as a Knesset Agdola, and then when the Arugei Beitar, people murdered in the city of Beitar that was lying in the sun for years and nothing happened to the bodies, they added the 4th one, Rachem al Yerushalayim, and then the rabbis, after the destruction of the temple, enacted number 4. No, but let's go back.
Part of the prayer is Torah and the rest of it's rabbinic?
No, the thanking of God for the meal is a Torah decree, and the rabbis put it together, telling us how to do it right. Nevertheless, this emphasis on the deed is not meant to exclude thought and or feeling. On the contrary, God's will is that the mitzvot permeate every dimension of our character, encompassing all the potentials which we possess. In other words, action counts, is the most important, but the rest of our body, which is emotions and thought, must be included every time we do a mitzvah. A mitzvah should affect not only one's powers of action and speech, but also one's powers of thought, emotions, and intellect, and even the encompassing powers of will and pleasure. All these powers are to be permeated by God's mitzvot. Moreover, this does not apply only to those mitzvot which are of a general nature and fundamentally depend on the feeling of our heart and our powers of comprehension. For example, the mitzvah of love, fear, faith in God, knowledge of God, and the like. There are mitzvot who are specifically about our emotions. It says, you have to love God with your heart. You can't do it without lip service. You cannot fulfill the mitzvah. There are mitzvot, fear God, love your fellow, is a mitzvah that must be performed with intention and emotions. Says the Rebbe, instead, all mitzvot, even those entirely dependent on action, like eat matzah, put on tefillin, light Shabbat candles, must permeate every aspect of our personalities, including the deepest potentials, including the special and especially that of inner heartfelt pleasure. Indeed, every mitzvah, whichever it might be, must be observed with a happiness and joy, as alluded to in the verse. All the choice parts should be given to God. Kol chelev lavai. Therefore, says the Rebbe, accordingly, since the observance is mandated by the Torah, the chukim, commandments that make no sense, in addition to the mishpatim, must be fulfilled not only with our power of action, but the importance of the observance must resonate with our minds. They should not be regarded as mere imperatives observed because we have no choice. We should not feel that. Since God issued a decree, we must carry it out even when it appears to be without reason or purpose. Instead, the mitzvot must be permeated every dimension of our being and all of our soul powers. Since God gave these commandments, even the chukim should be internalized and made a part of our thought process. Now the Rebbe says, with this, okay, the Rebbe is talking about a side issue. Says the Rebbe, therefore, chukim, you must have the internal reason. In order for you to fulfill it with all your body, all your emotions, you must have the understand as best as you can. And the teacher must give you as many reasons. The only one is the only one you might be excluded is Mishpatim, because Mishpatim anyway he understands. And therefore the Torah says, Asher tasim lifneim, even the Mishpatim, you must give him the reason. You must make sure that he does not go to a secular court and he stays here. You must give him the Kabbalah, because he might feel that he does not need all that, because he already understands why it makes sense. He learned that from a nemala, from the ant. He learned it from chatul, from a cat. Therefore, the Torah says, no, you must place it before them with the reason, with making sure he understands that he has to go to Jewish court, because only the Jewish court is given the right by God to rule, and they need to be understanding the Kabbalistic terminology.
Mishpatim only.
In Mishpatim, it's important for the Torah to emphasize. In other words, when it comes to commandment makes no sense, or a dot that nobody else does, you understand that the teacher, in order for him to make the person fulfill them properly, he has to teach them all the insight. He has to give them all the Kabbalistic. He has to give them all that, because otherwise the student will go away and forget about everything he was learning. Mishpatim is the only danger, the only category in danger of just sharing with him the law and then let move on, because he already understands it, makes sense to him. That's why you must give him the Kabbalistic understanding. That's why you have to give him the reason of God giving it to them. And therefore, he will be able to follow them by serving God and not serving his own common sense. And this is there are two reasons for not relying, page 331, there are two reasons for not relying on human logic in observing the Mishpatim, and therefore bringing dispute before a Jewish court and not a Jewish, non-Jewish one. A, where the observance of this mitzvot to be dictated by the logic of our animal souls, there would be a tendency towards spiritual descent. As implied by our sage statement, today the Yetzer Hara tells person do this, tomorrow it tells them do that, until it tells them go worship false deities. If you rely on your common sense is susceptible to the evil inclination, convincing you, oh, change a little bit, every day a little bit. You know, a ship that is in the middle of the ocean, make 1 degree shift over 24 hours, they will end up with like 190 degrees off their course, because with the time, it multiply and multiply. So the Yetzer Hara, if you base stealing or bribery or judging people properly based on common sense, the Yetzer Hara will say a little bit. It makes sense to divert a little bit, and then he's doing, that's number one. Number two, another reason for the observance of mitzvot may not be motivated only because of the dictates of mortal wisdom, is that even when the person actually observes the mitzvot, his observance will lack the fundamental element, the awareness of the connection that stems from and is established with I am God, you Lord. The word mitzvah is related to the word savta, meaning connection. So the Rebbe says, if I don't steal because makes sense not to steal, where is the connection to God? If I don't steal because God said so, I'm connecting to God. So we have two reasons that the Mishpatim, the simple commandments that make sense, must be followed with the Kabbalistic deeper understanding and with the reasons behind it. What's the reason? To connect to God. One reason is if you make it because common sense, you'll end up committing sin. Number two, if you do it out of common sense, you're not serving God. And the purpose of a mitzvah is tzavta, is to connect to God. So when you do it because God said so, you're able to connect to God properly, as opposed to, now we understand why lifneihem, before them, the word lifneihem appears only in Mishpatim and not in the other two. Because on the other two, it's obvious that they will receive the inner dimension. It's obvious that they will receive the Kabbalistic. It's obvious they will not go into other courts, because other courts have no clue about the discussion.
So, Rabbi, in Israel, a court is a
The judicial system of Israel does not follow Torah law, and therefore this applies. It applies not to go to secular law, yes. Unless you have no choice, as I mentioned before. We'll conclude here. Thank you and have a good Shabbos.
Thank you very much.
This always bothered me.